Just a sec. Boom. David the Indian, episode 4 or 5. What episode are we on, brother?
I believe it's four.
4. And we posted our first 2 episodes yesterday. Got really good feedback. Admiral Mercenek, thank you, sir. I got to go in. But we had 4 people jump on and go, we love it, we love it. And then they went from episode 1 to episode 2 and listened to both of those. So so we appreciate the feedback, and obviously we're doing something a little bit different. And the subject matter, I actually listened to both our episodes last night when I got home, our first 2, because we cover such a wide range of stuff. And some of it is what we might say deep diving. So that's the kind of information that for me, I want to listen to it over and over to process it and kind of assimilate it, if you will.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea with this multimedia center or cooperative. I mean, call it what you want. It's really an open field for people that normally can't get the exposure, especially these scientists that, many people consider wacky. So, I mean, to try to get journalists and to try to get any type of relevancy and media coverage today is it's almost impossible. And then even if you can get it, there's no assurance that your message is not going to be manipulated in some way or another. And so it's really the communications. We spoke about this in the prior episodes. Communications is everything. Because if we cannot allow our throat chakra to open like freely without any like stress of fear of fight and flight, then what happens if it doesn't open? Does our energy doesn't circulate, and in the equipment that you have there that you're involved with, Sean, doesn't work if we're not open. And it, and then
100%.
if we're open, everything works. So then you can't really say one piece or another actually is the missing link for you. Really, it really depends on your own kind of style, and you know that better than I do. You deal with a lot more, clients and a lot more contacts out there in the world today. So once again, I just want to thank you, Sean, for being open, allowing this to all come together. Uh, I guess you titled this particular episode the World Impact News #1, and so that all came about just pretty creatively. We don't have to keep that as kind of the platform or the broadcast channel. I like it personally because the World Impact News in the acronym stands for WIN, WIN. And so there are no losers when people come into this forum that we're creating here. Or it's not unique in any way. The uniqueness is that it's truly transparent and it's truly real time, straight talk, and covering all varieties of topics of human life and our purpose and meaning and passion and soul and mathematics and like you said, Sean, after listening, and I also I didn't listen to both of them, but I just chimed in. It's really amazing, even for me. I kind of make a living in a way. I don't really earn any earnings, but I make a living by talking. I'm very comfortable out in front of people, in front of groups, or whether it's one on one or whether it's small groups or even large, thousands of people. I don't have that hesitation to just because my throat chakra is open and I'm not letting anyone tell me that it's not. And so
Right.
that's really what it comes down to is we have to be that serious. I mean, it's not a war. What it is just common intelligence. So we spoke about the idea of creating a parallel communication system that's not reliant on the satellites and all of this, espionage and censorship. And so we have that technology. It's not unique in any way, but what is unique is the integration of these multiple modalities and the multiple topics related all the way from human consciousness evolution all the way to unemployment, poverty, climate change and the things that we're all facing on a daily basis here. So I don't, maybe you can just chime in at this point, Sean. I did send a couple of ideas or suggestions for today's
Saw
show.
those.
Yeah. And as I will continue to do that. And I don't know. Let me ask you a question, Sean. Have you ever heard of something called it's a social activity. It's groups, and it's called Cafe Philo. Have you ever heard of the concept of Cafe Philo?
I have not.
It's very interesting. It originated in France, as a lot of like Renaissance like movements have come from France. It's so wonderful and powerful of the country in that way. But Cafe Philo is really a simple concept of, having these like this. Right now it's 10 o'clock, actually 10, almost 10:20 on the Eastern time. So cafe would be appropriate. Still it's in the morning. You take a cup of coffee, like we've joked about with Dunkin' Donuts and your routine of getting your coffee.
Yeah.
And so 10 o'clock in the morning, we might actually start looking at naming the 24 hours in the day as individual shows. And this Cafe Philo could be like a show platform that can actually, it doesn't have to be all Cafe Philo. Obviously, that's what we're looking for, is that variety and that complexity. We want that. We want to integrate. So, but Cafe Philo is where you would announce like a subject, and it's usually limited to one subject matter. It could be something like the Quran or the Zohar or some other book or some movie or something, and actually have the people that get involved and come on live, have them have the basically the data trail of what that subject really is, how much time people spend, diving into that subject before the conversation. Really, you can identify that pretty easily, because when people start asking questions, these are really serious, like to the point, critical questions. They're not, what is this or what is that, and how do I do it, and stuff like that. It's designed to prepare the audience. So normally we really just want to be in real time in the present moment, but in some cases it's really powerful, like this Cafe Philo philosophy. It's really designed to be small groups in person that go into coffee shops and other, like public libraries or whatever, and gather, in small, usually 8, 10. It's a small group dynamic normally, but now that we have the ability to reach out to literally 1 billion people, and that's really the goal of this World Impact News Network. Until we reach around 1 to 1.5 billion, then you're not really in it. You're not in the game. You're still on the peripheral, in the stands or whatever position you want to take. You're not really in the game. And I mentioned that benchmark showing the 1.5 billion. There's a program and a gentleman, David Meltzer. Have you ever heard of David Meltzer?
Yeah, David Meltzer. I have heard of David.
Yeah, well, great. Yeah, we got one.
Oh! Finally, I know somebody. I mean, I told you the other day, I've never said no so many times in my life when I kept asking me, do you know this? Do you know that? I'm like, no. I'm like, all right, people, get on this show, come along for the ride, because we're all going to learn something together.
Right. And when people do come for the ride, they bring their own baggage and their own experience and their own stories. So we all learn from each other. And so
Exactly.
it is fun in that way. It's not intimidating, to be in a position where you say no, or whatever, or to be in a position of hardship, even suffering and on the edge of death. That's when normally the transformation happens. I mean, that's the God's honest truth. All those no's cannot be no's forever. And so here we hit a yes. That's a noid. That's that's a entanglement in quantum physics. That's what we're looking for, is really how are we woven together. And when we mention somebody like David Meltzer, or automatically, like in Cafe Philo, there's the preparatory work that has already you've already spent time. However, you learned about David and his channel. I know is the Bloomberg on Bloomberg Financial Television Network, and what's called the 5 Minute Pitch. Do you know that he has such a show called the 5 Minute Pitch?
I do not.
Yeah. It's a real interesting way of helping people, especially entrepreneurs. But we're all creators, and we're all trying to carve out, our statue of David, or who we are, from the inside out. So, David Meltzer, he has the show, and it's like a contest. So I don't know if there's 3 or 4 like presentations during the hour, but it is a 5 minute pitch. So that presentation's limited to 5 minutes, and it has a buzzer and stuff like that. And so he's kind of like there's a panelist. I think there's 3 judges. And so what happens after the day is over, the best one moves on. And so it's like an apprentice show that Donald Trump did, and which was a kind of a cool show. In the long run, there was a lot of it was high energy, and it was straight talk, and people getting fired, and there's swears in the boardroom, and people want to kill each other. But this is the this is the reality of the world that we live in. So anyways, David, I came across David. I contacted David, and actually, because the name David really is very helpful too, which, by the way, means beloved, be loved,
Wow.
or be beloved. So, when we attach, David's attached to each other. It's no different than anybody else, but it's, the most powerful word, Sean. I don't know if you've heard this before in all of the walking and that you've done in India and wherever else, spirituality. But the most powerful word that we have is our name. It doesn't have to be Sean. In fact, maybe there is another name that you actually go by, that your mom or usually mom, dad, it's the first word that we hear that we realize, I'm actually a living thing. Somebody's talking to me, and I actually have the ability to talk back. It's usually when people say your name. So like in your case, Sean, is your name Sean something that triggers kind of that emotional attachment, or is there a nickname or some other name that we could call you by, because we want to get right to.
I've always just gone by just my name itself, so there's never been anything for me that's been any different, really. But there was a time where it was Sean Ananda, where it was the bliss of being Sean, but it's always been pretty simplistic.
Yeah, and the Ananda comes from India, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And the practices there.
Ananda is the word for bliss.
Right. And it's something that Osho, from what I understand, when Osho was teaching people, disciples, followers, or whatever, they take on the name Ananda, right?
It's kind of like Ananda's a popular. So Sat Chit Ananda is full of knowledge, full of bliss, and Sat Chit. They used to say Sat ain't shit without Ananda, but yeah, that gets back into some of the Vedic stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and one of the other comments that I wrote to you between yesterday and now talking with you was not a comment. It was three letters: AOM. AOM. Have you heard of that specifically? AOM.
AOM, another form of Om.
Well, it's actually, this is where, like I was saying yesterday, Sean, it's actually, we as a society are not like totally wrong. I mean, some of the things we're doing is not right, but the practices that we have, like Om, because I'm just like everybody else. I tried to go and follow the path, and I understood to chant, you just say Om, 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 right? And so I think a lot of other people listening to this would agree to that. That's kind of the direction that we received. And then there was some revelation that I had, and actually it came across to me, the actual 3 primordial sounds, OM, are 2 of them. Like I said, it's AOM, but it's really the ah. So when we chant, it's really and see that really activates that lower chakra and the vibration, and then the om, and by the time the m vibrates, it comes out of your head. And so that om is the complete cycle of om. And so just like I was saying in the last couple of episodes, the issue right now in our society is we're just not completing the puzzle. And in most cases, there's only one piece that's left, like om. Because if you chant those two differences, you will feel immediately the om inside of you, because that's the prime. Like I said, your name, or like in my case, when somebody says David, no matter where they are, I'm going to turn my head. I'm going to think it's me in some way, shape, or form. But, you know, so the completion of who we are in what our total intelligence is really needs to come to those terms of that last piece. So when I meet people and I help evaluate whatever their business or personal relationship or whatever they're going through, I always try to come to that one piece. And that's the power when you're doing like executive level coaching, is in the analysis and the critical thinking and failing and being compassionate towards the other person. We come to that one piece that's missing. So like in our Om, for people listening, you can research this. This is not like my opinion. And really, I don't really have any opinions. You know, I regurgitate a lot of, or I bring to the surface a lot of names and businesses and things like that. But, you know, I'm just the messenger, really, ultimately. And I'm trying to help guide people if they want that guidance. And that's why we're here. And that's why we're, dedicating this type of time investment, because already this is, I think, day 5 or 6, but this is the 4th episode. The first 2 weren't recorded, so they're really not technically in the library. We're going to try to retrieve at least the audio or the visual or something to get the essence of how all of this is developing. And that's what I think really makes it an interesting show, and multiple shows. Because like I said, we can weave different topics of these our windows, and so then people can become followers in subgroups and things like that, but always maintaining the unity, always bringing it back to the 0.00 absolute. And we talked about the power of that, and how that is really significant in our really coming together in one humanity, in one consciousness, in one unconditional love, in one soul. And so I don't know if you want to make any comments. Normally if this was a live thing, we would be getting some live questions, and we're going to be working towards that. It doesn't have to be every show.
Doing some lives. And the nice thing is that me and you are on a schedule now where we're doing every call at 10 a.m. East Coast time. So we can start announcing, doing some live calls. I do have to just get into YouTube to figure out how to get the guest on, which I've tried a couple times and it just didn't seem intuitive to me. So I have to just break that down. But I do, before we go on, I do want to just say real quick, I wanted to acknowledge, let's see here, I had it on my phone. Admiral Mercenek, Nadia, Shahid, Christina, and somebody goes by Spider Bite, and others that left comments for us on that last video. I just want to acknowledge those people, say thank you. We welcome your comments. We want your feedback. And the more feedback we get from you, the more direction it gives us for future podcasts and things that we're doing and setting up doing live. Now, one of the things that you sent me, which I find fascinating, that I would love to jump into, is Kryon and the Circle of 12. That was one of the text messages that you sent me. And I'm wondering if we could go into that today and talk about that to maybe finish up this episode.
Well, it's a wonderful topic for us to get right into. It is Kryon is a subject matter that's been going on for at least 30 years or so, from what I can tell. And Cryon is an entity, so it's in another dimension of our world, our universe. And so this spirit, call it an angelic being, call it very intelligent, whatever you call it. It's like Cryon is on top of it, and we all are too. That's the whole point. The more that we connect with these communicators on this level, basically we can then vibrate I'm not saying high or low or whatever. It's not really a high or a low vibration. It's not a tone signal. It's actually when our chakras all open up, our heart, we talked about this, our heart and brain, our chakra, as the energy flows. So Cryon talks about the magnetic service, and he talks through a gentleman who's apparently a human being. I've never met him. His name is Lee Carroll, and that's with two R's and two L's in Carroll. Lee Carroll. You can look it up. Cryon.com. Lee has been this channeler for Cryon. He calls Cryon his partner, like his partner, when we know that energy has no partnership. I mean, you can't come in and say that there's an entity that's out there and it's only talking to you. I mean, that's how cults and stuff start. And so we need to be a little bit I don't want to say critical, or judgmental or whatever. It's not really even that. We need to take everything with a grain of salt and just let it come into our field of awareness. And then if something like Cryon in the Circle of 12 resonates with you, which it does most people, then you go into a little bit further. And that's why we're here, so that in the future, if you had any questions, you could contact Sean, and then we can come together. If I need to get personally involved, I'm happy to do that. And so Lee Carroll, and I said this to Sean in a prior discussion, a brief discussion about Cryon, because Sean didn't know about Cryon. And a lot of people don't, but a lot of people do. I don't think a billion people, though. And that's really the threshold. Like I said, until you're reaching that 1.5 billion, you still have work to do. But once you get there, it's a celebration. Everyone's jumping up and down. It's a milestone that, really we haven't broken. And so Lee Carroll channels this entity, which gives all sorts of inspiration and also technical information about anti-gravity, levitation, abundant energy, and all sorts of these kind of disclosures of extraterrestrial and supreme intelligence ultimately. So the Circle of 12 is actually not a physical circle of 12 people. It is it's hard to describe it, because it's really the way I envision it. The Circle of 12 is like the AI. It's like the artificial component when it's not really artificial. That's why it's kind of hard to describe. The circle is an advisory kind of sounding board, but it's not an individual thing. It's these messages come to people that access the Circle of 12 and ask for that guidance. And so actually the name that I go by, the show, David the Indian, is a very interesting connection, and absolutely the reason why I go by David the Indian. And it's a story. I won't get into all of the details, but basically a stranger, Sean, and people listening, one day I was on the beach and a stranger came up out of nowhere and basically after just asking me who I was and where I lived, immediately said, "You're David the Indian." And because I live on an island, there's a parable on the Cryon website. Lee Carroll, the organization Cryon, offers these free audio tapes, which are awesome. And so he has a lot of tapes, individual years, but also a parable collection that's basically storytelling, just like in the Bible or whatever. But this one story that Cryon tells, and it's on the free audio parables. You go in there, and it's the fourth MP3, and so you'll see that it's the second. There's a little bit of a path to get there. Unfortunately, it's not so direct, like right into it, but that helps, Sean, because when we start mentioning things about mythology and these stories and parables, it's hard because people think that they're fake, they're made up. But in this particular case, if people listen, it's a 9-minute audio tape called David the Indian. An actual Cryon created this story, and Lee Carroll tells it about person David, i.e. me, and living on an island, i.e. High Brazil, here in Brazil, and actually venturing away from the island for reasons independently, and leaving paradise to go through the fog and try to find out what's on the other side of that uncertainty and the unknown. And that's not a physical barrier. What we're talking about is the spiritual journey. And even Joseph Campbell, we talked yesterday a little bit about Joseph Campbell, his work with mythology and these subjects, like a David the Indian living on, call it Atlantis, but in this case, High Brazil is also a mythical island in a separate prophecy that's told in Ireland. The Irish elders used to tell the story of High Brazil, which is an island. And so it's kind of interesting in the sense that the stranger says to me, "Oh, you're David the Indian," and I responded to him, and I believe it was a him. I didn't touch him or anything like that, so I don't know. It could have been like a ghost, but it looked real. It looked like a human being, so I wasn't like taken away like E.T. I'm talking with some strange, entity. I don't have those type of experiences. Some people do, and whether or not they're actually real or not doesn't matter, as long as we're receiving the messages from these deliverers. And that's what they can do. They can help guide us, but they can't do it for us. So after the person said Cryon, basically I turned around and looked the other way, and when I looked back, the person was gone. So it was like, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't that long of a delay, but and I'm not like trying to say that it was anything other than this lead that I received from a person to investigate Cryon. And when I did, I was shocked. Imagine when you're listening to this audio tape that's supposed to be like from this ET or this from another universe, and it is an exact mirror of the life that you live. So for me, it was kind of it was amazing and fearful at the same time. And so, David the Indian, I'm not going to give away the audio tape. It would be really helpful if, let me ask Sean, did you listen to that 9-minute tape? Were you able to access it?
It was not
okay.
Yet.
Well, even for yourself, now that we're prompting these things, see that chain of message. And by the way, I already apologize for doing these brain dumps on you, but man, what I need more than anything, I need a like a relief valve. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm experiencing the same thing that everyone else is. I'm at 99%, and I need that one last percent. That's all I need. I'm not asking people for money and for anything, but time does have a place. We need to invest time. And like your case and my case, like we said from day one, keep track of the time that we are investing together. Because when it starts to return on that investment, it's going to be interesting to let people know that, it took, 200 hours to be a billionaire. Okay. That's not a bad time investment, So, the sky's the limit for, our perception of thriving in abundance. There is no limitation like a lid, like a glass ceiling or something like that. But that in itself is not really a practical way of governing our world, because we already see that, people can be super wealthy. They really abandoned everyone else. And like right now, 1% of the people in the world could control 99% of the money. And the money controls pretty much 100% of the projects. And so it's not rocket science. We need to turn around these ratios. Needs to be 99% of the people hold the wealth, and the 1% need us to come in compassion to help them to ascend to their authentic beingness, and to just help in the ways that we can without intruding on people, because some people don't want your help or my help. And some people get very angry at me when I talk to them because I ask very, very potent and sharp questions in the first meeting, because I know what the human behavior is. The human behavior is what's in it for me and to take advantage. So, one of the things that Osho talks about in the Book of Secrets, and this is a book that I refer a lot to. So if people that are and even yourself, Sean, you said you've read bits and pieces, which is great. At least you know it exists, and at least you know that there's some power in the words that come from that book. But in that book, one of the secrets is that in our humanity, when we meet each other, like you and I, specifically one-on-one, it's more difficult in group dynamics because you have to evaluate all of that dynamic, but on a one-on-one, Osho says that immediately when we look at each other, there's a dominance that is obtained, like the alpha. And it's not because, like in our case, for example, it's not because we're trying to be dominant over each other. It's just ingrained in our human nature to take that position. It's very rare. And this is where, with the things that we're talking about on this show, it's very rare to come neutrally and not to try to take an advantage. It's so natural to try to take that advantage. And even something very simple like shaking a person's hand, for example, Sean, where did that come from? To extend a gesture to another person in that way was a cultural thing that we learned. And really what I looked into, it might not be the truth, but it makes a lot of sense because of what I just said. When we first meet each other, like you can imagine, in the Wild Wild West, when the cowboys were meeting the Indians and other cowboys were meeting whatever. When we were settling a place like California in the gold rush and stuff like that, and also in the Midwest, these ghost towns and whatever. Back in the day, when you went into a town like that and nobody knew you, you might as well have been an ET. And so what happened is we learned to extend our hands, because back then people used to have guns on their waist. So if you were like standing with your hands to your side, that was a signal that you're getting ready to pull your gun. So, and most people realize that when you shook the person's hand, they still had another hand, obviously, and they could do damage too. I mean, you could fake the handshake, but ultimately these are the gestures. These are the things that are really just very basic in our society that we don't realize, and especially the younger kids, because we're not passing on these kind of stories, these folklore, the art in the humanity side of how we express ourselves, which is very effective. Obviously, we know with cinema and Hollywood and what have you, that in television in general, any broadcast, even this show, this potential for the World Impact News, the WIN network, is equal. We could be manipulative, or we could actually be truthful and honest and genuine, and we prefer to stay with that honesty. So Kryon is great. Listen to that 9-minute tape audio, Sean, if you can. I mean, I don't know.
I definitely will. A lot of times I get caught up on stuff on the weekends.
Yeah. Well, please bear with me, because as I mentioned when we first met each other, with the complexity of what the potential here is, it's unlimited potential, but we do need to kind of put our arms around it a little bit and be practical and come down to earth and all of that. But,
man, I don't know about that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
why would you bring me back to earth, man? Come on.
Well, there's nothing. Earth is beautiful.
I'm
Earth
just
is,
teasing you, man. I'm
yeah.
just teasing you.
It's like
Look at
we
me.
are
I'm
so
out in
happy.
space.
Yeah, we're so lucky, and this kind of dovetails into another person that I sent a contact. His name is James. I don't know his last name, but he's a soul coach with the Gaian Earth Trust, and they're based in Wales, the UK. And I just literally came across this Gaian Earth Trust, and I go pretty deep in the research that I do, especially anything online. And so, and this James, I invited to, and I sent a message that we're doing this daily thing on Eastern Standard Time at 10 a.m. And that's very helpful, Sean, for me, because it really can, if they can't do it today, can you do it tomorrow? Can you do it the next day? I'm not talking next week, next month, or let's schedule something on, one of these, calendar schedule things electronically. What I'm trying to do is bring like real time. Like I said, if I talked to James last night and he's on the show today, man, that conversation is so rich and it's so real time. And he's going to be like, this is what I need, David, right now. This is the missing piece of the puzzle for me to activate and manifest everything about the Earth Trust, and for people just learning, and for you, Sean, having these pieces of medical equipment and anything that has an inventoriable or an asset like some value, collateral value, you have to have a building. And I don't know anywhere to build a building without having land. I mean, we do build on the ocean and platforms and things like that, but really it's land. So that's why the Earth Trust, the Gaian Earth Trust, and what James is doing is so timely for what we're trying to accomplish here. And their number one issue, along with Harakat, who yesterday we had Harakat on talking about the Venus Project, and all of these projects ultimately the pipeline, Sean, for the land development is so congested, and it's like diarrhea. Hopefully, once we loosen everything up, it's not going to stink and have a negative effect on our society. But what we have come up with is a platform and is a strategy that's foolproof, that brings all the resources that this group like Earth Trust is looking for, because they're building these eco villages on 100 acres, 500 acres, and 1,000 acres. And so the 1,000 acres is their city of like 200,000 people are going to be living together. And so they've identified like land and kind of a strategy on how to make these 1,000. That's their goal. Like their metric is for them to say we succeeded and the model is functional. It's 1,000 of these eco villages that are all across the globe. And so in these eco villages is where you can come in the work that you do with all of the cooperative effort with science, technology. And in these villages, we'll have these like devices like the med beds, if in fact that's what that village wants. We're not going to tell people what to do, but we're going to create the sovereign environment where people can be entrepreneurial. They can take risks, and we can share those risks, and we can also work together in groups, like a virtual office. And that's the idea. Like this island where I am with High Brazil, it's Ilha das Govas in San Sebastian off the coast of São Paulo. This island here is in a perfect environment to be that nucleus, the hub, the fixed point for something like the Gaian Earth Trust, and to not satisfy, but extend, these gifts to James and his whole group, and not just James, but when it all comes together, people that come onto this platform and listen to these shows, they all pretty much have the same need. It's money, really. I mean, if money was no object, everyone would have a med bed. Why wouldn't you? I mean, it's not going to hurt you. I mean, from what we understand, I mean, extensive use or overuse of anything probably is not good. So we recommend go in there, have a nap, and get your job done and get out and let the next person in.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Well,
yeah.
James actually contacted me yesterday. I sent him back a text message. He contacted me through WhatsApp. So, I can circle back with him and or you, and then we'll get him on and let him, very much like we did yesterday, let him, get on and talk about the project and start, doing what we can do to help get the word out, to fill in all those, spaces that need, some attention to make that project a reality.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it. Even with Harakat yesterday, you heard him tell you directly the issue is the public the publicity. The idea of his project in India is another 1,000 units that the bench. It seems like everybody wants like 1,000. Like I said to you, our benchmark is 1 billion. But in the world of land development, you're talking about these projects to make mini cities. You're talking about hundreds of billions of US dollars of actual money. I'm materials and stuff, and to do it with scientific expertise requires the use of these new materials, which are amazing. You don't need steel and cement to get that type of durability and long lasting. They are synthetic, or this is where chemistry can come in to really help benefit our society with these products, these basically space products that Tesla and Elon Musk and what have you are incorporating. But we can actually bring these technologies right into the developments that we have available to us. And in both James and also Harakat, Sean, both of them mentioned the idea of going into areas, different countries all over the world globally, and doing a resource inventory and audit and finding these properties that are dormant. They're either underutilized or not utilized at all. The interest for us is not to go into something that's functional and try to make it dysfunctional. So in our communities, we take an asset, for example, where we are here right in front of the beach, the 15 beaches in our geographic areas it's only 40 kilometers. So we have our ability to put our arms right around our whole community. And so I've done indirectly this type of audit over 27 years here. I didn't really have much else to do. This
Right.
is, so I dive into like statistics and in the census reports and all of these public records. And I've been tabulating all this data. And now we're at a point where we can input it into one processing center, a data mine, data warehouse, data clearing warehouse. And we don't need to build like infrastructure like you may have seen. In fact, I think, let me ask you, in Cleveland Clinic Hospital, are you associated at all with Cleveland Clinic?
Not really. My former company, we did a lot of stuff picking up equipment out of Cleveland Clinic. I'm obviously familiar with them. But aside from them, just kind of maybe being on the cutting edge of a lot of the data and healthcare stuff that's coming out, I've never really been through the facility. We purchased a lot of stuff out of there, but I haven't physically been in there.
Interesting. I think it was about 6 months ago. It was back in 2024, if I'm correct. Cleveland Clinic working along with IBM, and also I believe it was OpenAI or Google, one of those, in that playing field. Actually installed the first quantum computer of its kind inside Cleveland Clinic. And so this computer, Sean, is, I don't know, it's hard to believe that we actually can engineer things like that with so many neural connections or whatever, all the wiring and stuff. This is like trying to describe what your human brain really is and come out and create some device. I mean,
Hmm.
it's incredible. And, I don't want to say the sad note is that it's all unnecessary. you know, I mean, these huge investments. Look at Elon Musk. For him, like 6 trillion US dollars to buy something or another is like just another, business decision. It's like it's really it's amazing and the nice part is that we have that ability to leapfrog, so that now, when instead of talking about these too big to fail type of organizations, now the intelligence is spread out, across the board. And so it gives the public and the people listening to this podcast specific encouragement. If you do have a project, or if you do have an organization and you do want to get into like we're trying to limit to 1 hour. And by the way, we only got 2 more minutes, but we did start a little bit late.
We might have to go about 5 minutes past because, like you said, there was it took us about 5 minutes to get the call up and running. I don't know why that link, initially, but whatever. But we got to go at least another 7, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay. Well, that's what I was just trying to extend an invitation for the people that you don't have to show loyalty as like a guest of this platform, because really the goal is not to have you just a guest. We also want you to come in and actually be a presenter. And like I said, pretty much everyone I know, really, they don't need somebody to tell them their business. What they need is that last piece. That's all they need. And in many, many cases, everyone I know pretty much comes out and says, David, get me the money and let me do my project, please, for crying out loud, and I get this level of like aggravation, frustration, and people just at their wits' end. And when I meet somebody for the first time, if all they're saying is money, 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 and here's my PayPal account or something, I'm just like, dude, I mean, I'm not a prostitute in that way. I mean, I'm open and free and a free person, but dude, the money, money, money just. I'm a finance guy. My MBA is in international finance and business and entrepreneurship. So money, I know, but I'm tired. Even on the board level, I've worked on strategic boards as high level decision making, where thousands of other people and their families were impacted by the decisions that this board's making. So I understand the seriousness of money. But, and I said this in the kind of closing, people that have projects, do yourself a favor. When you're looking at the budget, first of all, be honest. Don't just throw a number out. And, I get people, it seems like everyone wants $1 million. And so, I mean, and then so they say to me on a first call, David, send me $1 million and we're partners. I mean, there's no question, and it's like, I just have to take a breath, Sean, because, a project has two elements, the labor and the hard costs. And when I ask people like that about $1 million, I say, what's the percentage of the labor? And they can't answer it. If you can't answer how many hours it's going to take an estimate for somebody to do something, a task to earn the value to get paid, that means that I'm not the scam artist. You're the scam artist. I mean, you're throwing numbers up against the wall thinking that I'm some idiot or something. I mean, we don't want to work that way. What we want to do is help people break out the labor costs with the hard costs. So these projects, like I mentioned just now with Guy in Earth Trust and James, he has projects. He has all sorts of data on how these projects function, but he can't answer what is the labor and what is the hard cost. And why is that important? Because, we talked about this in closing today. We don't have much more time, but we talked about alternatives across the board, not just in one area. That's what we need. We need the freedom of will and choice in a world where it's money, money, money. There's no choice in that. What's the other alternative? Death. That's the only other alternative. And so the parallel kind of economy that we're saying, we're creating a parallel reality here, or what we've termed the living matrix. So the world of finance is the dead matrix. It's attorneys and contracts and license agreements and all sorts of agreements and terms and conditions. The living matrix in the world that we prefer is open. It's shared. There's no discrimination. It's a time-based system. And so what does that do in kind of closing with James, for example, and also Harakat and anyone else? I almost guarantee you that your phone's going to, when people see this or listen to this tape, Sean, this is the answer for people, because everyone that I know is in the same boat. They don't have the money, and their project's really good, like 99% there with maybe 1% error. But see, that 1% error doesn't complete the puzzle. So the energy can't flow through the dynamics of what they're doing, their business plan, marketing plan, and all of the other plans that they have to manifest and to materialize doesn't happen. And then people start looking at each other and saying, what are we doing? When is this going to happen? And people become impatient and start fighting with each other. And then it gets chaotic. And then it's just a downward spiral. You might as well dissolve before you go file chapter whatever, bankruptcy. And I did go through bankruptcy, so I could tell you, don't go down that road. No.
No, that's divorce, good
to know. Divorce is worse, but bankruptcy is right there. And then death is right behind bankruptcy. Notice I said that, behind bankruptcy. Death is not ahead of bankruptcy. And so that's where we're at. We're going to give people the opportunity to create these time banks in their community, like where you are, for example, in Richmond, Virginia. If you can get the population there, and the number, whether it's whatever, 700,000 or a million, I don't know what it is. It's pretty large, I'm sure. If you take that and we were able to offer a service for you in your community and the state of Virginia, all of the states, but let's start like small, like we're talking about 40 kilometers from your house and your business, a localized, area. If we were able to empower each person in your community and offer them 24 of these time credits, basically without them doing anything, that would be amazing. And these time credits, 1 hour is equivalent to $10 to start. So it's not a lot. It's actually less than the minimum wage, but it's at least setting up a fair playing field, and also offering everyone on earth, every human being, an opportunity to live their life full and complete and healthy and happy, and without the stress and worries about all of the job requirements that we have. And most people we know, they go to work and they're not happy. They're doing it because they're obligated, and they have kids and stuff, and they're afraid that if they try to go to like a time credit program, it's going to fail. But the nice part, Sean, is that it's not an all or nothing. We're not doing away with the dead matrix to replace it with the living matrix. What we're doing is create that bridge. They talk about that bridge. And that bridge is not a physical bridge. It's the spiritual bridge of connecting us in unity. So it's not about a giving away. And that a lot of people that I talk to, they consider that it's a negative to their lives. And so what we want to really express to everyone listening and closing today is that this is not a waste of your time. And all you need to do is while you're listening to Sean and I and other guests that are coming on in the whole 24-hour program. And by the way, that opens the door for Asia. I have a lot of contacts, and so do you, in India and Singapore and Hong Kong and South Korea, even North Korea, but that's a different story. So that 24/7 broadcast is actually open for the world to be talking all the time. So like when you and I wake up on the Eastern side, man, the news is like breaking news every moment. And it's not like CNN with this horror, like a hurricane coming in or something that's going to be streaming these stories for like weeks to just kind of brainwash people. We're going to touch subjects and we're going to move on. And those subjects are going to be in a 1 hour educational format, so that when you access the World Impact News broadcast, however we do that through Applicativo or whatever, we still have to determine, some of the mechanics of how we execute this overall communication strategy. And so once we get to that point, it grows on its own. And quite honestly, Sean, I am personally recommending that we institute like an AI management system. And this needs to be tailored and created for the dynamics of what we're doing. I don't know anybody else that's doing this at least successfully. I know a lot of people talking about, having localized communication, and the ham radio people are really the people that I've come close to appreciate. Basic radio technology is all we need to distribute the data and also energy that's in that data, and which supplies all the resources ultimately for us to do all of the other things and develop, our communities, or redevelop, we should say, bring it back to the original, greatness, the MAGA, or these things that we talk. It's not even greatness; it's the perfection. And I'll end it on that. We are perfect, all of us. Just believe it and live it, and then enjoy it. Okay. So I don't know if you want to wrap it up on your end there, Sean. I'll continue after we get off. I got a couple of other more important, or more, not more or less, but more, meaning additional things that are happening. So I'll send you the names of more people. Feel free, like you said, that James was, yeah. My wife is actually, go ahead. Why don't you close up in a second here? Go ahead.
Right.
Go
Well,
ahead,
hey,
Sean.
once again, man, thanks again for your time. Anybody that's out there that's seeing the podcast, you're more than welcome to interact with us and be a part of it. You can reach out to me here off the channel, put your stuff and information in the comments, and we're really excited to start promoting projects like James, like Heracats, and all the other projects that are out there that really are just looking, like you said, for that 1%. And so, David, once again, thank you for your time. As always, another great episode. And I will look forward to catching up with you, same time, same place tomorrow morning.
Excellent, Sean. Thank you. Same time and same place and same channel. Take care. Have a great evening.
We are here.
And we'll talk to you later.
All right,
Bye-bye.
brother. Take care. Bye-bye.